Hello, welcome back to the series of light novel That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime summaries on AniMonolith. Continuing the events of the previous part, after finishing his experiments and confirming the success of Tempest's new defense systems, Rimuru returned to his office only to be informed that Shinji and his group were looking for him. The three adventurers had been struggling with a major decision. Should they continue their uncertain path as freelance dungeon explorers or settle down and work for the nation of Tempest? Originally, like many others, Shinji and his friends had dreams of becoming rich by conquering the labyrinth. But after the recent changes, such as the relocation of the powerful Adelman team to the 70th floor and the deployment of upgraded golems to the 60th, they realized they had hit a wall. Their strength simply wasn't enough to progress any further. The grind ahead offered money, yes, but little purpose. Their motivation was fading. After some serious discussion, they chose stability. The group decided to pledge their service to Tempest, hoping to work under Rimuru's leadership, especially since Master Gadra, their mentor, had already joined the nation. Although Rimuru appreciated their decision, he had no intention of drafting them into the looming war unless they volunteered. Instead, he offered them a different path, one that aligned with their skills and kept them far from the front lines. He appointed them as assistants to Ramirez, the eccentric fairy queen of the dungeon. Ramirez had long been looking for competent aides. She rejected most monsters because they couldn't keep up with her wild ideas, and she didn't feel comfortable around foreign researchers. The arrival of three capable, flexible-thinking otherworlders was exactly what she needed. Naturally, Ramirez was overjoyed. After some dramatic flair and a lot of fairy energy, she hired them on the spot. Their new employment came with a set of quirky but decent terms. 3 gold coins per month, totaling 36 a year. Bonuses were available, but highly unreliable, depending on Ramirez's mood. Food, clothing, and housing would be covered, although Rimuru quietly noted that this part was mostly for show. They'd likely just eat at Tempest's cafeteria and sleep in the labyrinth. Clothing wasn't really a concern either. Despite the chaos of the onboarding, the transition went smoothly. Shinji and his team quickly settled into their new roles as Ramirez's assistants, diving into research work and dungeon management. However, Rimuru's mind wasn't completely at ease. Gadra still hadn't returned. Since re-entering the Empire, he had completely vanished. No contact, no updates. Rimuru couldn't shake the feeling that something had gone terribly wrong. And deep down, he was right to worry. A few days after assigning Shinji's group to assist Ramirez, Rimuru was in the control room chatting casually with Benimaru and Diablo. With Sue off scouting the dangerous regions of Jura, it was just the three of them today. Their conversation was unusually relaxed. Rimuru appreciated this lighter side of Benimaru, away from his usual strict military demeanor. In fact, Rimuru, Benimaru, Sue, and Diablo were very close to each other. Sometimes they even took trips together to Ingrasha to blow off steam, laugh, and share drinks late into the night. During their watch, the massive surveillance screen powered by Argus showed no sign of Imperial movement. While Argus was incredibly useful, Benimaru casually complimented the magic's design, which triggered Diablo's signature overreaction. True to form, Diablo launched into an over-the-top monologue, praising Argus as a marvel of magical innovation and artistic engineering. Rimuru, used to this routine, had to cut him off before it got unbearable. "Stop it already! If you can't help yourself, go rave about it somewhere. I don't have to hear it." Diablo, as usual, crumbled like a popped balloon. "Kufufufu, Rimuru-sama, how merciless you are. Even your words alone pierce the depths of my soul." Rimuru could only sigh. Just then, a report came through from the labyrinth. "A direct spatial transfer has occurred. It's from the old man, Gadra." Rimuru stood up immediately, sensing urgency. Diablo accompanied him while Benimaru stayed behind to guard the control room. In moments like these, Rimuru was always impressed by Diablo's ability to snap into serious, dependable mode. It was like watching two different people share one body. They descended to the 70th floor of the labyrinth. There, they found Gadra, worn out but alive. He looked like he had one foot in the grave. Apparently, Gadra had anticipated danger. He had cast a teleportation spell ahead of time and equipped himself with a resurrection bracelet, a magical item powered by Ramirez that could bring him back from death if he returned to the dungeon in time. That plan had just saved his life. Gadra explained what had happened. During the Imperial Conference, he tried to urge Emperor Rudra to stop the war. While his request for a private audience had been granted, the moment he entered the palace, he was attacked and stabbed from behind. He lost consciousness immediately. Fortunately, the teleportation spell triggered, and the resurrection bracelet activated once he arrived in the labyrinth. Rimuru asked who the attacker was. Gadra shook his head. He didn't know. Whoever it was, they bypassed his detection completely, landed a direct hit through his magical defenses, and nearly ended his life. His robes were still torn and corroded where the blade had struck. Even Diablo, seeing the aftermath, admitted the technique was impressive. Gadra said he had a suspicion about who it might have been, but even he found the idea hard to accept. For now, he wanted to investigate further. Rimuru didn't press him. He could see Gadra was shaken, even confused. And while he wasn't ready to place full trust in him, he wasn't about to cut him off either. "I'm just glad you're still alive," Rimuru said. Diablo nodded, agreeing. "If anything, this proves the Empire's strength. We must proceed with greater caution." They had no choice but to accept that they couldn't get more out of this situation for now. Gadra had risked his life and barely survived. Whatever came next, they had to stay sharp. After briefly explaining the circumstances of his near-death experience, Gadra began to elaborate on the Empire's forces and battle plans. With this, Rimuru understood that war was 100% likely to occur and immediately ordered the entire Tempest to enter war mode. With the current situation, until no commitments were made, Tempest would do everything to win this war. However, Rimuru also set 3 rules. The first was to not attack civilians. The second was to prohibit Tempest from attacking first. And the third was that when Rimuru declared the war over, attacks would be prohibited. With that, an emergency meeting was held in the control room. All the commanders, including the 3 primordials, Gadra, and the people's spiritual support, Masayuki, also on standby in the corner of the room. At last, Argus began to pick up movement from the Empire's forces, specifically the massive magic tank division at the border. Rimuru gently patted Ramirez, then calmly began briefing everyone on the situation. He started by outlining the enemy's military strength, an estimated 1 million troops, divided into 3 major corps blending magic and science. Most alarming was the division of 2,000 magic tanks. These weren't just any frontline force, but a terrifying vanguard capable of devastating anything in their path. While Rimuru was familiar with the concept of tanks from his past life, to the people of this world, these machines were nothing short of surreal. Everyone stared, mouths agape, as the surveillance screen showed the colossal steel beasts rolling across the land. From the enemy's formation, Rimuru concluded that even if Gadra's defection had been exposed, the Empire hadn't significantly altered their original plan. Yuki, still pushing for his coup, would likely reassure the commanders that Gadra was dead, lowering their guard. Rimuru reminded the group of the Empire's broader strategy to conquer the West by overwhelming force. Then he issued Tempest's counter-offensive plan. First, the First Corps Commander Gobda was tasked with evacuating civilians from the Inn-town, a settlement near the Ameld River, back to the capital. Gobda's second objective was to move his troops to central Dwargon and coordinate defense against the tank division. Though giving up the Inn-town was unfortunate, Rimuru promised to rebuild it after the war. Rimuru worried if Gobda could handle all this. Even so, Rimuru breathed a sigh of relief when he seemed to understand after being carefully instructed by Benimaru. Next, Gabil, commander of the Third Army, would provide aerial support for the evacuation. He was to monitor from above, ensuring no one was left behind or injured. Afterward, Gabil's forces would also head to Dwargon to reinforce Gupta. With 10,000 residents in the Inn-town, even using magic trains at full speed, the evacuation would take time. That's why both Gupta and Gabil were ordered to act as fast as possible, because with tanks, the Empire could travel at 80 kilometers per day. Rimuru estimated they would reach the battlefield in 20 days, given the 1,500 kilometers distance from their border base. Benimaru took over the tactical explanation, laying out a unified defense with Dwargon. According to Gadra's intel, the Empire planned to attack Dwargon head-on, using the open terrain near the Connaught Mountains. The tanks' route was deliberate, a show of force intended to provoke a reaction from Tempest and Dwargon. However, Rimuru had forbidden any preemptive strike. Instead, they would allow the Empire to make the first move and crush them in open combat. Dwargon had already been informed, and King Gazelle pledged to fight alongside Tempest. Benimaru explained that if the Empire held the river crossing and the high ground near Dwargon, they'd attempt to force negotiations or bait a reaction. But if Tempest and Dwargon played it smart, they could reverse the trap and launch a coordinated counterattack. The next assignment went to Geld, commander of the Third Army, who was tasked with defending the capital of Tempest. Using surveillance data from Argus, Benimaru quickly deduced that the Empire's tank division was just a decoy. a flashy display meant to draw attention. The real threat was the main Imperial forces, who were already advancing stealthily through the dense Jura forest, hidden from Argus's eyes. To counter this, Sue's Shadow Corps was deployed to scout the forest and gather intel. Their goal, locate the enemy platoons and coordinate with Gale to intercept any force threatening Tempest's core. If the Empire's target is the Labyrinth, then we'll lure them inside and crush them. And if any of them remain on the surface, Geld's army and my unit will eliminate them. That's the plan. The room ignited with energy. The War Council was fully motivated, especially the three primordials, Testarossa, Ultima, and Carrera, who were chatting among themselves like they were looking forward to a party, rather than a war. Rimuru knew full well that these three would never sit out a battle like this, but they also wouldn't make a move unless he gave the order. Immediately after, he assigned each of them a role. Testarossa would assist Gobta, 1st Army. Carrera would back up Geld, 2nd Army. Ultima would support Gabil, 3rd Army. Among the cheers and determination, Gobta hesitantly raised a concern. Is it okay for someone so unfamiliar with the battlefield to be in the 1st Army? Rimuru nearly cringed. Gobta's ignorance was painful to witness. Did he have any idea who he was questioning? Testarossa, calm, elegant, and terrifying, smiled sweetly and replied, "Ara, how reliable of you, Tilda." But her eyes were cold enough to freeze lava. Rimuru, internally, "You poor goblin. You're gonna regret that comment." He decided not to say anything and let nature run its course. Gobta would find out the truth the hard way. Rimuru had issued a strict gag order about the primordials' identities. Outside of those who'd been present when Guy Crimson visited Tempest, no one else knew what these three demonesses truly were. Still, Rimuru believed he could trust them. Mostly. 3 unexpectedly perfect duos, well, 2. Unlike Gobta, Gabil handled things like a pro. He bowed respectfully and said, "I have many weaknesses, please guide me." Ultima, who was known to be sadistic and dangerous, seemed to instantly take a liking to him. "Yep, let's do our best together." Wise move, Gabil. As for Carrera and Geld, they hit it off immediately. Rimuru sensed they shared the same warrior spirit, and he was confident they'd work well together. Looking over the pairings, Rimuru felt satisfied. If he had switched Testarossa and Ultima, Gobta might have been dead already. After assigning everyone, Rimuru gave them his final encouragement. The primordials responded with unwavering loyalty, but Rimuru still couldn't shake a lingering sense of unease. He reminded them to follow their commander's orders and to keep their true identities hidden. If things ever went off the rails, the consequences could be explosive. Still, for now, everything was in place, and Rimuru could finally take a breath. No matter what came next, these 6 would hold the front lines, and Tempest was ready. Just as Rimuru was about to close the strategy meeting, a voice suddenly spoke up. It was Masayuki. With a confused expression, he raised an important point. "I've been appointed as the commander of the Volunteer Corps, but I still haven't received any actual mission." Rimuru froze for a few seconds. He had completely forgotten about that. Feeling a little guilty, he quickly came up with a role for Masayuki, one that didn't involve fighting but was just as important. "I need you to maintain public morale," Rimuru explained. When war breaks out, anxiety and panic can easily spread among civilians, especially among immigrants not used to war. A charismatic figure was needed to calm the masses. Masayuki, blessed with the unique skill Chosen One, was the perfect person for the job, even if he clearly didn't agree with that assessment. His face twisted in discomfort at the assignment, but Rimuru pressed on. This role, while non-combat, was crucial. With Tempest citizens being evacuated into the labyrinth, someone needed to ensure peace inside. Masayuki's legendary luck aura and overblown reputation would do wonders. Thankfully, Masayuki reluctantly accepted, albeit with visible dread. With most of the preparations wrapped up, Rimuru was finally able to relax a little. However, Ramirez reminded him of a very real danger. If the 100th floor boss, Veldora, were to be defeated, the entire labyrinth would collapse, forcibly ejecting all inhabitants to the surface. That included the civilians. It was an extreme scenario, but not impossible. And if it happened, it would trigger the most brutal war Tempest had ever faced. Rimuru couldn't shake the memory of his death in a previous timeline, one that Chloe had witnessed. There was definitely someone in the Empire strong enough to kill him. That threat couldn't be taken lightly, however, not all hope was lost. Raphael had already anticipated this and was deliberately using the dungeon's Elite 10 to expose the Empire's trump cards. By doing so, Rimuru could identify and isolate the real threats early on. As always, Rimuru thought, Raphael is quietly protecting me from the shadows. Everyone had their role, the battlefield was set. But even so, Rimuru couldn't shake his unease. Somewhere out there, a monster strong enough to kill him was waiting. But no matter what happened, he swore to protect his people, even if it cost him everything. Thank you for listening. Goodbye and see you again in the next videos of AniMonolith.